Because you've got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been...
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing or mine.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, everybody, to the 590th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, a proud member of the Sports Social Network. You can find us at 8 o'clock basically every Sunday evening in the UK, noon Pacific time in the US. I think we're going to be coming with an extra show this week because we got some big stuff to preview, and we want to probably touch on a little bit more as we get close to that fight, but we will hit on that later. With me today, James and Des. James, join us for the first time. Happy to have you. We are here first to talk about Nick Ball against Ronnie Rios. Ball picking up stoppage in the 10th round, knocking Rios through the ropes. And his corner finally seeing enough. Third time he touched canvas. A good performance by Ball. Definitely some defensive liabilities to be found there. But I got to tell you, Des, he's a fun fighter. He brings entertainment. I think he'll have a limited shelf life. But Nick Ball, he's one of those fighters that you kind of can't help but get behind. Des, I don't know if you heard me hit you into that. There you go.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there, mate. Look, the Nick Ball project's an interesting one because only a couple of years ago, he wasn't meant to beat Isaac Lowe. And he's been very active. Frank's kept him very active on the back of that performance against Isaac on that Tyson Fury undercard. And he's gradually brought him up. And the Dog Bay fight was his coming out night. And then the Ray Vargas was the one he should have won, but he got a draw. And they threw him in with his hardest one, which was Raymond Ford. And I think Raymond's a really good fighter. And it was a very, very close fight. Ball done really well to get the win. And now he's Ronnie Rios back in Liverpool. So he's had a very, very busy 2 years, been exceptionally high level last 12 months. And the reason I'm saying all this, because I think maybe they could be guilty of rushing Nick Ball a little bit here. Because last night I saw things that brought an awful lot of questions that I had in my own head together. So Nick Ball got hit with too many punches last night. The face don't lie. He was bleeding out of his mouth, bleeding out of his nose, and he was marked up around the eyes. He got away with one with Raymond Ford and he got a draw with Ray Vargas. So in his last three fights, it's not been as clear cut as it might appear. So what do we know about Nick Ball? He's not a huge puncher, but he's definitely intense. He's dynamic. But it's almost like it's a predictable dynamic. It's a pounce. So I watched him last night against Ronnie. He does a step and a drag, and then he throws. So it's step, and on the second step, he lets his hands go. And being a smaller guy, and he's probably been a smaller guy all his career, that's how he gets inside. And when he's there, he lets his hands go. So he opens a door with punches, and when he's inside, he throws. Sometimes he overinvests in his right hand. I don't know if you noticed it, guys. He throws this looping right hand around the corner, and he brings his back foot 180, so he becomes southpaw, and then he goes to work. I'm not sure if that's by design. I don't know if he's a bit clumsy with it. Last night I saw there's things about Nick Ball that make him very exciting, and that type of excitement can sometimes paper over the cracks. And if we're looking at Nick Ball in a division that's got your likes of Leo, Fulton, Figueroa, Nick Ball needs to be the best version of himself. So it sounds like I'm being hard on Nick Ball, but I think last night showed me that they might have to put the handbrake on a little bit with him, because against the elite guys in this division, and by the way, Raymond Ford's an elite guy. I think, and Raymond Ford started a bit slow in that one. If he'd have started a bit earlier, I don't quite know how that would have gone. But against the elite guys in this division, I think Nick Ball would find it very hard. It was exciting last night. I enjoy watching Nick Ball, but I'm in agreement with you. I think that style's got a shelf life. And I think in this division, with these type of talented kids, I think Nick Ball needs to be a little bit less predictable, do things less in straight lines, and start to incorporate more feints and some more angles.
Well, and he might be able to get that done. He just, if you look at him, I think, James, the most interesting thing when I look at Ball is that, Des caught him doing a couple of things, but I think just generally he's a pattern puncher, and I think he's going to be just kind of found out by somebody with a better boxing IQ. I bet if Raymond Ford had another crack at him, he'd probably win. I actually think
100%, mate. Yeah, 100%. If Raymond Ford got him again, Raymond Ford starts quicker, and that becomes a much better fight for Raymond Ford. It was a close one as it was, but I think if Raymond Ford gets him again, I don't think Raymond Ford sticks around at this weight anyway, which is good for Nick Ball. But I think if Raymond Ford had another chance at that, I think Raymond Ford knows what he's dealing with. He starts a lot quicker, and they suss Nick Ball earlier.
Yeah, and it's but Ball, I mean, he's entertaining, and it's all about matching him correctly. And I could see James, like there's a lot of good matches for him out there. But where would you take Nick Ball next?
Evening, both. Thank you for having me on. I'll start off with what I thought about his performance last night. High intensity, like he throws himself forward in certain circumstances, and he just punches whatever's there. Sometimes in kind of unusual combinations, and I think he does have a few balance issues as well. Sometimes when he stands off a little bit with a high guard, he kind of brings his rear heel up in this weird kind of way. He looks a little bit precarious when he does that, and I don't think he punches well from those positions. But ultimately, it was an energetic, tough performance from him. And I was impressed with Rios as well. I've never seen him fight before, and he was finding loads of sneaky counters with his left hook to the head and body. Somehow he was getting underneath Nick Ball's punches when he was rolling in and out, in between slipping and sliding. And obviously he showed incredible toughness as well. I mean, with Nick Ball, Matty, you described him just then as a pattern puncher. Like, what do you mean by that? Do you think like he's a little bit predictable, or it's like he's readable, or what did you mean?
Yeah, it's the way if he's pushing you back, he's generally going in a specific way. A lot of the times, and this just me trying to pop off a memory, he'll go jab, right hand, and then he'll either throw a left uppercut or a left hook, and then he'll throw the same shot with the opposite hand.
I got you. And I think you've seen instances last night where Rios did read him and did find those counter punches. And, you know, I think a couple of those hooks to the body, if Nick Ball wasn't so well conditioned and maybe like a little bit squat as well, I think those punches would have ended quite a few fights. I mean, as for his opposition in the past and where he goes next, I mean, he's already been in there. Like, that Raymond Ford win's pretty good, man. I think that's going to look better and better with time. And even Ray Vargas, when he's quite a boring fighter, he's a technician and a very, very competent boxer with a good engine and a massive size advantage in that fight. So even though, okay, a draw and a win, but against that level of opposition and against Rios now, like who would you put him in there with that you'd be thinking Ball hasn't got at least a fighting chance in the bout? Like who would you seriously steer him away from? Because I can't really think of too many people who I'd be frightened for Ball, like if you put him in there with him.
Two of the three top ranked champions. I wouldn't put him in with. One would be Espinosa. The other one would be not even a champion. I wouldn't put him in with Rapace Ramirez either. I think him versus Angelo Leo is a good fight. I think that's a perfectly worthy unification, but I can't see why Top Rank would take a unification out of their own stable at this point in time. So I would be thinking you got to be looking at like potentially like good or at least emerging featherweights on the UK scene. So I think I would have to divert to you guys as far as someone you think might be on the come up that they could put a ball in with that might have their own local following.
I mean, my issue with Nick Ball, guys, is I think James touched on it when he said he was quite predictable and it was becoming quite easy to read. And Ronnie Rios, James, he's like your Carson Jones. He's like your Caleb Truex. He's one of them guys. He's a world level gatekeeper. So he's not a puncher. His best win was Diego De La Hoya. He's fought Ray Vargas. He got beat. So he's mixed in good company, but he's never beat the best. He's never been anywhere near beating the best. He's that bottom end of world class that is a gatekeeper for guys like Nick. Now, Nick, last night was a homecoming for Nick. It was, and I understand the pressure of being at home. And I understand they're selling a lot of tickets, and I understand sometimes that carries you away a little bit. But I need to see more out of Nick Ball now if we're going to talk about Fulton, Leo, Figueroa, Robsy, Espinosa. And probably the best example I could give would be like Evander Holyfield. Now, Evander used to do this move that was brilliant. He would bounce without his feet coming off the canvas. He would bounce, transfer his weight from one foot to the other. And he would jab and bounce. And then he would throw a feint. Now, the interesting thing about boxing is the higher you go up the level, the fighters change. So when you're boxing at domestic level and you go forward like Nick Ball does, guys go backwards to get away from you. But when you go up to world level, guys stay there and want to meet you. So when Nick Ball comes in, they're going to try and look at an angle, hold their feet and catch you coming in. And that's what the best guys will do with Nick. So what he has to do, going back to Evander, he has to throw a few feints. And when the kid throws his jab to meet him, he's not there. And as the jab's hanging out, you've got to come over your right hand and you've got to start using feints and using angles. And that's the only way Nick Ball's not going to get caught going in all the time. I promise you, the higher you go, the less these guys want to run away from you. The best guys in the division will not be going backwards with Nick Ball. They'll be using angles and they'll be using feints. And Nick Ball will get caught coming in. And he is predictable. Everything's done in straight lines. And pattern punching is exactly what I'd call it, where he goes 1-2 to open the door, and then he's opening up when he's inside. But that won't work against the best kids. So he has to change that, and he has to bring a bit more to his game, because where he's got so far is brilliant. And his line of trajectory has been really good. But now he's got to bring a bit more to it now. He's got to be a bit cuter. At the moment, he's like the Kevin Keegan of boxing. He's very exciting, but there's an awful lot of leakage. There's a lot of leaks behind him as well. And he has to sew them up a little bit if he's going to take on the best guys in this division.
So I'm looking at the WBA rankings here. and I was looking for people from Britain on there, and the only two that are ranked in the top 15 with the WBA, and they're 13 and 14 respectively, are Hopi Price and Reese Edwards.
Mate, who's the other one, mate?
Hopi Price and Reese Edwards. Those are the two that are ranked in the WBA top 15.
I think you're probably the only one we've got anywhere near. The only world-class fight we've got at featherweight is probably Lee Wood, but I don't think he sticks around at featherweight. I mean, he might be enticed for a big fight.
Yeah, and Raymond Ford is still ranked at featherweight, but he said he's moving up to 130.
He's not sticking around either. No.
Yeah,
but mate, I think Lee Wood draws look, one's from Nottingham and one's from Liverpool, so geographically it's a real good link, and both cities will come out. That's a good fight, but I'm not quite sure that's the road Nick Ball probably wants to go down. I think there is easier fights in Saudi with a lot bigger names. I think Lee Wood's a hard fight for Nick Ball because Lee Wood can crack, and Lee Wood will hit Nick Ball. So I'm not quite sure that's the sort of fight they want for Nick Ball yet. I'm with you. I think Anjo Leo is a good option. I think maybe Robs is a good option, although Robsy will definitely read Nick Ball as he comes in like that. So go on, mate.
Yeah, and Ramirez and Espinosa are supposed to fight each other. So you have Fulton, who is not ranked number one, who should get the shot. Then you have Carrington behind him, who's definitely showed some issues, but not necessarily against a come-forward fighter. As disappointed as I was with Carrington, I still think I would take him over Ball because Ball does the things that Carrington wants him to do. Number 3, a guy I haven't seen yet, but he's undefeated Argentine, Mirko Cuello. And then behind him, Kolmatov. We assume Ford is out of the division. Number 6, Hayato Tsutsumi. 7 was Rios. Drop him out. Victor Morales. I'm trying to think if I've seen much of Morales.
I think I know where he'll go, mate. I think he'll go. They look for the Ray Vargas return.
Yeah,
that's a safe play.
They're mentioning that, trying to go for the unification in a fight that, and that's a fight. Like honestly, I thought that he had a better argument that he beat Vargas than he did that he beat Ford.
Correct. Totally agree.
So, but we'll see. I mean, it's just, but I mean, could you guys randomly see them pulling in Edwards or Price for a defense?
I could see them doing the Wood fight, really, like, because that, as Des was saying there, geographically, that's like getting the football fans involved, Sweet Caroline, all that business, and then like, I think that would be a really exciting fight. And there's not to disagree with you, but I feel like that would be a really punishing fight for Lee Wood because he ships a lot of shots, man. I know he can crack and he's got a good chin and he does recover. And he tends to win fights late on, but he would take an awful lot of punishment, I think, in that fight. If his last performances are anything to go by, but I think that would be an all-action fight. I think I'd probably like to see that one next.
I just don't know if he could make featherweight anymore. I thought that was the big deal against Warrington, as he said, like he was just toast at the weight. I'm curious, but I mean, maybe like. Yeah. But I mean, there's no reason that they couldn't do it at a catch weight or even at 130 for a one-off for Ball as well. It's not like there's only one way to skin a cat on this one, because Wood probably wants a cash-out fight at this point in time. He's been through some freaking wars.
What worries me about Wood, James, is he's a world-class puncher. You know, we've seen him put people to sleep, and
he's sneaky. He's freaking sneaky.
He's a really good mid-range puncher. He catches you with them left hooks mid-range, like we see it against Warrington. The closer you come, so you have to press Lee Wood to give yourself half a chance. But if you're anything mid-range, he throws them little left hooks, and you're right, he's a sneaky type of puncher. And between Dogbo, Vargas, Ford, and Rios, Lee Wood out punches all them kids. So it could be a hard night for Lee Wood, James. I see that theory. But looking at what I saw last night with the frequency Rios was landing and the punches Nick Ball took, I wouldn't want to see Nick Ball win with a puncher just yet. Because unless he tightens up. Look, there's a lot in last night. Like I've mentioned it before, the homecoming, selling tickets. You've got a lot of friends in the crowd. It's your night. Maybe it got away with him a little bit. But I didn't like the punches he took in Raymond Ford. I didn't like the punch he took last night. I just think maybe.
Well, and even in the Vargas fight, he was eating some nasty body. If Vargas was a bit more of a puncher, those body shots he was hitting Ball with would have probably taken him out late. But
Vargas and Ford are not punchers at all, are they, mate?
I think you have a better argument that Ford can bang a little bit than you can that Vargas can. I mean, Vargas has gone to decision, I think, in like his last, like 12 or 13 fights. It's something absurd.
Yeah, I just think I need to see more feints from Nick Ball. I need to see more angles, less predictability, and less doing things in straight lines. And that pattern he's got, which is tap, tap, unload, he's got to stop that, because to repeat myself, when you go up in levels, kids don't go away from you. They stand and they look to meet you, and they will meet Nick Ball as he comes in. So he's got to work on that, and that's why I understand that the Lee Wood fight would be interesting. I understand Lee Wood could get beat in that fight, but judging on last night's performance and the way Ronnie Rios, who's not a puncher, who's never beat anyone close to a Fulton, a Leo, a Figueroa, he's not that class of kid. I think maybe Nick Ball probably wants to go back to the drawing board and just tighten up a few things before he goes in with a puncher.
Yeah, and we also have to think about his physical limitations. The reason I thought Espinosa is just a terrible fight for him, you'd think, maybe catch him off guard and land something big over the top. I could see much more kind of like, a peak Paul Williams throwing uppercuts on the inside kind of thing. I could just see Espinosa beating the living shit out of Nick Ball for some reason.
And sorry to come in. I want to hear what James says, but it's worth noting Nick Ball's not a puncher either. Like he's got just short of a 50%, just over a 50% knockout ratio, and he's now coming into that level where we want to see if he can carry a punch into that class he's boxing at. So Nick Ball's a volume puncher, and he's an intense pressure fighter, very similar to Ricky Hatton, I suppose, but he's not a one-off puncher. So
Ricky was a better puncher than him for sure. I think
Ricky was a better puncher.
I think Juan Diaz is a better comparison for Nick Ball.
I think going into world class now, I think we're going to see Nick Ball level out a little bit, and we're going to see just have to make a few improvements before they push him on, because this division and one just above it, there's some very talented kids in that division.
Yeah, it's 126 is in really good shape. And the problem, the reason the Vargas fight is made is it seems like Vargas is kind of a free agent right now. And whereas everyone else seems to be tied in with Top Rank as far as fights that you might want to see him in with. That was a good one. And I tell you what, I would not be shocked if they make Lee Wood against Nick Ball. I just don't know if they'd make it at 126, but we shall see. Maybe even Lee Wood might even be retired. God only knows. It is boxing. It's a weird sport.
No, he's fishing for a big fight, Matty. He's looking for something.
Okay.
Yeah, he's fishing for a big fight.
Is he looking at 130 or?
Well, I don't think he's going to be. Look, I think Lee Wood's now. He's had some good paydays. He's had some really good nights. There was talk about him boxing at the Nottingham Forest City Stadium, the City Ground, this football stadium. I'm not sure that one come off because they just couldn't get the deal over the line. But I think Wood would now work with the suggestion, whether it's featherweight or super feather. I think he would work between one of the two. And I think if the offer was right, I think he would stick around. Why wouldn't you stick around for one more at featherweight, which is a weight you've been campaigning at for the last few years? But
I'd like to see him fight a better
version of.
I'd like to see him fight Kakachi. I think for some reason that fight at 130 seems more interesting to me. I don't know.
It's a good fight. I think Lee was trying to cash out. I really do, trying to get a bit of a bigger payday. To be honest.
What was that, James?
Ball's a little bit. No, I was going to say that Ball is a little bit trapped by, as you touched on, his physical limitations. Like he doesn't look like he cuts much weight. He's an actual he's just one big muscle when he's in there, and because of his height, I can't really see him going too much further north than where he's at right now. And like, you know, in a way, once he gets to higher level opposition, they're not going to take the kind of chances with him, like standing in close and taking away their advantage as readily as people are willing to do when ball's been on the way up. So intelligent boxers will just play to their strengths, and he has to close that distance in one way or another. Now, whether he jabs his way in, which he sometimes does, or other times he like hurls himself forward and he looks quite exposed when he does that. So you've seen him get caught in those scenarios before. I just don't see how like moving up in weight will benefit him really, unless he's struggling to make the weight, which he doesn't look like he is. He's so small for the weight. I mean, like that Ray Vargas fight, the disparity between them was like comical at times. So I think he's a little bit trapped in that space in that weight class.
Yeah, he stays at featherweight, James. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. I do think he'll probably be a career featherweight. And you know, another guy who was really short, you know, for the weight, and you felt he could have gone down to 122. I mean, I always thought, you know, Nassim Ahmed probably could have been a junior featherweight if he wanted to put in the work. But, you know, Nick Ball, I think he's just a featherweight. You might see him one off against a fighter. Like you said, if that's the only way they can make a Lee Wood fight, each guy's making 7 figures guaranteed through however the shit they make it happen. You know, you'd be like, okay, whatever, you know, cash talks, bullshit walks. But yeah, it was a good entertaining fight. I think Ronnie Rios, you know, he's getting on up there. Probably got a decent payday. Might want to call it a day, but he's still a very capable guy as far as it goes. So good on him. Good performance. But I'll tell you, I thought the fight of the night was the 140-pound fight between Henry Turner and Jack Rafferty. With Turner just you know, boxing the crap out of Rafferty for most of the fight, and then just finally getting worn down, and then between rounds 9 and 10, corner pulling the plug after he had been dropped and hit with some really clean shots. But this was a really fun fight between two undefeated guys. Another solid fight to go into the annals of history in the Commonwealth title fight scene there, Des.
Yeah, it's a quite an interesting division because there's a lot of disparity between guys that have left domestic boxing like Jack Cattrall, Dalton Smith, Adam Azim's on his way out of the domestic scene. Josh Taylor's a world-class fighter. So there's a little bit of a vacuum now, and it's being filled with guys like Henry Turner and Jack Rafferty, and both of these guys have had their careers built on beating kids with losing records that can't punch. And what we saw last night was a beautiful clash, a blend of styles. One was this archetypal amateur boxer coming to the pros, and the other, in Jack Rafferty, was this typical kid that we get from the northwest of England, where his sort of hands are high and he's got a bit of the Jamie Moores about him. I wasn't sure how to call this one, because with fights like this, you want to see the first 2 or 3 rounds, and you want to see what Henry's legs are like and what Jack Rafferty's head movement is like, and then first 3 rounds will tell you a lot. I'm going to be honest with you, Matty. I didn't like the amount of energy Henry was expending in them first 3 or 4 rounds, and I thought, this is a 12-round fight. This takes an awful lot out of your legs. And Jack's going to be here because Henry's not a puncher. Jack's going to be here round 7, 8, and 9. And that's where Henry's going to earn his money. And I think there's a little bit of hyperbole in the commentary about kids like Henry Turner, because they say stuff like, he looks phenomenal and he's got brilliant technique. It's pretty basic 101 amateur boxing. It's step back and jab, step back and jab. And then you try and get a rhythm. And as Jack's coming forward, Henry's timing his feet to meet Jack's feet. So it's step and jab, and he's going backwards all the time. But if anyone's been in a boxing ring, they'll tell you, going backwards is the hardest thing you can do with your hands up throwing punches. And it expands so much energy. And come round 6, I just saw Henry's body language just drop. I don't know how you saw it, but he just looked to me like a different fighter. And I was looking at the odds because I could see a change. And Jack in round 6 was something like 8 or 9 to 1, and in round 7 his price had dropped to 1 to 3, and that's how quick it happened. So in round 6, Henry's pace dropped. In round 7, Jack put his foot down and started having success, and then we saw Henry sitting on the ropes, and then Jack was allowed to work, and Henry had absolutely nothing left. And I think in round 8 was a big round for Jack, and Al Smith done the right thing, and he pulled Henry out on the stool, and Henry had absolutely nothing left. But I think it was a classic example of another kid. Henry needs to work on shortening his movement up a little bit, working on pivoting, working on angles, staying in the pocket when you can, and then going for a walk when you have to. But his whole game plan last night seemed to be, I'm going to just keep going backwards, and I'm going to win this title on the back foot. It's a very hard thing to do over 12 rounds. Shane Mosley had really good feet. He didn't do that. Floyd Mayweather had really good feet. He understood angles. Having good feet doesn't mean going backwards all night. So Henry will come again. I'm sure he'll learn from it. But it was a really good win for Jack Rafferty. And maybe down the line, to preempt a question you might ask me, maybe we might see Jack Rafferty versus Campbell Hatton. They're both at the same weight, and they're both from the same part of the country.
You never know. It does seem like Campbell's more than willing to keep giving it a go, and I mean, fair play to him. It's a lot of guys would have just walked away after taking that L. But anyhow, I was really impressed with the way that Rafferty just kept going along there, and he was a slight underdog going into that fight. And James, number one, I mean, how did you see the fight? And number two, you can kind of see that when a guy has 23 fights behind him, and this is his step up fight. I guess the bookies probably have legitimate questions about what they're protecting.
Well, I'd never seen either of these guys box before, so this was a rare treat for me. And I agree with Des that Turner got off to a flyer. I mean, I thought he looked really sharp. Like his footwork, he was darting in and out, moving both directions. I thought his right hook was really strong, and in the early rounds, at least, he was pivoting quite well off of that. Rafferty, a step behind, struggling to land the backhand in like that open stance battle, southpaw versus orthodox. But yeah, he couldn't sustain the pace that he'd set for himself. So you could see that potentially the excitement of the occasion, it just put an extra spring in his step. But as the rounds wore on, Rafferty was just edging closer and closer and closer, started to land to the body, started reaching with the right hook. And I think it was round 6 or 7 where Turner, like his battery seemed to empty dramatically. And then that's when Rafferty really turned the pressure up. And it was an intelligent game plan. Now, whether that was his plan to go in from the beginning, or he decided once that Turner got off to a flyer, right, I'm going to press him with my feet, and just see what he's got later on. He timed that surge really well, and the end was quite brutal. Those body shots were rough, and Turner did really well to make it back to his feet. The right decision to retire him in between rounds. I thought it was a great fight. I really enjoyed it, and fair play to Rafferty, because it would be easy to be discouraged by that kind of performance in the early rounds, because Henry Turner was landing everything he threw pretty much, and he looked flashy with it. He looked confident, fast, taking shots in return. He was brave. He threw back multiple left hands when you could see he was dog tired. So there's no questions about his heart determination, his technique, his skill, or his talent. It's more, as Des says, pace in the fight, and that comes with experience. And unfortunately, he was on the losing end now, but fighters can sometimes learn more from a loss than they can from a win. So that was a great fight for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of those fights that rose to the occasion for sure, that just kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. But honestly, a lot of these British and Commonwealth title fights absolutely do deliver. So let's see here. A fight that involved no locals. Javier Herrera and Oliver Flores, 3 rounds. This Javier Herrera, he's a solid-looking Cuban. I believe he's fighting out of Dubai. Might be where he's set up at. But he might be worth your time. He definitely seems to go for it a bit there. Let's see here. What one else did I see that I thought was? Let's see here. I'll tell you, this one was a little bit interesting, and people might not see it that way. But 8-0 Jack Turner getting a quick stoppage over Gonzalo Corey Naldesi, who was 5-6-1 previously, but he had never been stopped before. I don't know if any of you guys saw this particular fight, but I get the feeling that this Jack Turner is a real puncher.
Yeah, I saw that fight. To me, he looks like a bit of a wild pressure puncher. I mean, he threw with both hands, and he just looked very open to me. You know what I mean? So
very open, nasty stoppage though. I mean, he laid him out.
Oh yeah. That was a brutal stoppage, no doubt about it. It was one of those where, for the first 20 seconds after the knockout, there's like a stillness in the arena. And people start to think, okay, is this actually bad? Fortunately, it didn't turn out that way. And he got up in the end, and he was posing for pictures right at the end, looking okay. I mean, obviously, wishing the best moving forward, because that was absolutely a brutal knockout. As for JD Turner, he's not going to be able to commit himself like that. Similar to Nick Ball, actually, like with his recklessness and his activity, that comes with a certain element of risk. And but that's the thing. You don't know if that was just excitement or whether it was, this is, a bowling pin I'm just going to knock over because I'm excited, or whether he's got other aspects to his game that he didn't display last night. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing him again as well.
Yeah, interesting prospect. He might have a ceiling, but it's going to be rather entertaining, I think, until he gets there. Let's see here. What else did I catch? I caught Walter Fury. Of all the interesting names these Fury guys have, he got Walter. Taking on Dale Aerosmith, who came on late notice as Billy Zeppelin was unable to make the fight. Sorry, bad joke there. But interesting on this one. Des, I know you might not have seen this one, but Fury getting just the second win of his career, not stopping this guy who was 6-1-14-5. But we had this discussion about these guys who come in to survive, get a decent paycheck, and go out the next week and do the same thing. Aerosmith doing the true job of the journeyman.
Yeah, and that's what journeymen do. And we could. There's been books written about journeymen, and to repeat ourselves, we covered this a couple of weeks ago. Journeymen are very well respected over here, Matty. They're an integral part of British boxing, and it's what brings our amateurs come into the pros as prospects, and they're fed probably 8 or 9, 10 journeymen, and then the caliber of journeyman goes up, and then you have a kid that's probably had 7 or 8 losses, but is ambitious enough, but should get beat. And that's how you bring a kid into area level and English level and British level and Commonwealth level. And them titles you talk about, British and Commonwealth titles, I've got to tell you, mate, they hold so much water in this country. They have so much value. Like I remember being in America and explaining a Commonwealth title to an American fighter. He just didn't get it. And the British title, and I understand that, because sometimes you can be in an American gym and there's a kid there that's had about 4 or 5 bouts, and it's this American kid I'm talking about, and he probably wins a Southern Area belt. But we have them here, and we have put so much stock into them. And guys will tell you, a lot of professional boxers will tell you, I was a Southern Area champion, and I'll never ever be more proud of anything I've achieved in my life again. I'm in the books. And that's the same for the English title and the Commonwealth title and the British title. And of course, the European title was a step up from all of them. That's a bit different. You're world ranked, and it's a continental title. But our domestic titles really mean a lot to us. And journeymen play a very big part in getting our kids from the amateurs into those titles. So, yeah, another example of a journeyman last night. And he'd done what journeymen do. He's come along. He's given Walter 4 rounds. I presume it was a 4-rounder, wasn't it, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's given him 4 rounds, and then that journeyman, if you look him up, he'll be out within the next 10 days. And if you can get out 3 times a month, do that over the course of a year, there's 6 figures.
Yeah, and he didn't get touched up that much either. So, yeah.
And Matty, to add to that, because I've known a few journeymen, gets that 2 or 3 times a month. They've also got jobs. Like he might be a gardener, or he might have a gardening company, or he might be a fireman, or he might drive a burger van. So he's got 2 incomes. And over the course of 5 to 6 to 7 years, when you speak to these journeymen, they really are a different type of success, but a good success.
Absolutely. You're bringing home the bacon one way or the other.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah, hit the gym a few times a week. And the thing is, if they want to work another job on top of all this, I mean, they're really doubling it up. I mean, you talk about making a decent living for, a decade of your life. Correct. Not a bad way to go.
And Matty, it's a different type of training. They've not got to do so much road work. They've not got to do so much sparring. It's like it's body sparring. It's keeping your hands up. It's looking after yourself. It's knowing how to go for walks, tying people up when you need a breather. It's a different type of training. So they can dovetail it with a full-time job as well.
God, if I would have been smarter in my younger days, I would have just gotten punched around a bit. But anyhow, let's see here. Andrew Kane getting a second-round stoppage over Lazaro Caceres. I don't know if I caught any of this one at all. James, what of the aforementioned did you see and take any interest in?
I caught the Walter Fury fight, and he fights like a fury, doesn't he?
He's athletic, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like he's you can see in his stance the way he switches. He's got those long hooks, very easy on his feet. I mean, Arrowsmith gave him something to think about with a few right hands over the top, but he didn't seem too shaken by that. I mean, I don't know how much of your athletic prime can you get back if you're having your second professional fight when you're 27. I mean, he looks like very comfortable in the ring, and he's got amateur experience from his teenage years. I wonder how much he's lost and how much he can regain through applying himself. His family name will afford him certain opportunities that other people in his position wouldn't get. And that's, I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. That's the way it is in boxing and the way it is in a lot of other industries. So why would you turn down that opportunity if it's presented to you? I just wonder, where is his level? They're going to push the Tyson Fury's cousin angle as well. They should. It's marketing. They want interest in their fighters. They want to drum up ticket interest and pay-per-view buys in the future. But yeah, very early days for him. And as for the Dale Arrowsmith, the concept of the journeyman, I've always found so interesting. I mean, like, there's kind of an implicit understanding that this isn't 100% a competitive contest when you see a kid who's 2-1 against a guy who's got like 15 wins and 200 losses or something. And for that to bridge the gap from sparring and amateur into those southern area regional title, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of the veteran, like holding the hands of like the new blood into the sport. It's like, I think it's unique to combat sports, because I can't think of another sport in like genre where that would be at least implicitly accepted.
James, I've seen a kid who can sell 200-300 tickets turn over, and a journeyman's caught him flush. He just walked onto one, and he's sat down in his corner, and the trainer has said to the journeyman, and the trainer might have 7 or 8 journeymen. He gets out all around the country every weekend, and he said, whatever you do, don't beat this kid, will you? Because the promoter will never ring me again. Like, it's really hard to explain that to the casual that doesn't understand this sort of secret society of journeymen and prospects. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I've seen it so many times, and I've actually seen like sort of journeymen just go through the routine just to see if the kid can get 6 rounds under his belt before he moves up a level. So I know exactly what you mean, mate.
So here's a question for you. Can you ever think of an instance where a journeyman knew that it was going to be his last fight and didn't tell anyone and decided to go out on a W and just schooled some random up and comer?
Well,
No, I haven't seen anything like that. But
Massey, sorry, go on, James. Go on, mate.
No, I was saying to Matty before we got on, I used to kind of have a volunteer role for the British Boxing Board of Control, and there was a local show in Birmingham, and there was a kid there. I think he was 1-1 or something like that, or 2-0, and he had all the support there. And I used to have to go around and collect like the trainers' registration numbers and get them to sign off and stuff. And this prospect, he was sitting there getting his hands wrapped, getting all wound up. He looked at me like he wanted to kill me, and it like he was just in that mental zone, like so wound up for his fight. And so anyway, I finished backstage, got ringside for the fight, and this Latvian journeyman has dropped him twice heavily, in like one in the first, one in the second, and then you could see this kind of like the worried looks at ringside, and like somebody like. All of a sudden in the third round, the Latvian guy was just standing off him, and you could see the prospect. His legs were gone. He was completely out of there. But the journeyman just stood off him, and obviously it was given as a draw. So you tell me, like, do you know what I mean? So there is that goes on all the time, and it's just a strange kind of thread that runs through the sport. I just find it interesting. That's all.
Very, very good way of putting it. It's a strange thread that runs through the sport. But Massey, you know, when you say that on his way out, last fight, the journeyman just like, remember, these guys are not Sugar Shane Mosley or Aaron Pryor or nothing like that. These guys have been trained and conditioned to sort of stop fighters looking as good as they could look. So they don't trade with them, and they don't throw with them, and they don't hang their chin out. These guys are not competitive. And if you've ever been in a ring with someone that's not competitive, it's really hard. You know, you end up hurting your hands, and in the end, you end up just, you know, having to just try and work things out. And you never look overly good doing it. But there has been instances where guys have been written off and they've somehow turned their career around. The best example I can think of, perhaps to call him a journeyman would be a bit harsh, but he calls himself a journeyman, was Steve Robinson, the former WBO featherweight champion of the world, who had, I think, double-figure losses, and then was a late call one night to help save a show, ended up beating a world champion, then went on to have about 3 or 4 defences. And you might recall, he's the one that Nazim Hamed beat in Cardiff, and they sold out the arena, and Naz beat Steve Robinson that night, and then went on to have his world championship run where he fought them all up to Barrera. But even after that, Steve Robinson was a very good European champion and fought for various titles, you know, domestically. So Steve Robinson is the only example I can really think of where someone who was the guy you call to save a show, the guy that wasn't really meant to be ever going to be in the away corner, he was the one that actually did turn that around.
Those stories are cool. There was a guy, and here's an interesting one. If you guys remember this, it's probably about 15 years ago. It was a fighter named Gilberto Quebas, and I think he was a Mexican fighter, and he had like a 500 record. He was like 30-30 at the time, and he just got a late call for a lower weight title fight, you know, because there's only so many fighters. This is 105 or 108, and he won the fight, and he got couple 2-3 title defenses under his belt too. I mean, it happens. Sometimes you just got to be the guy who's willing to answer the phone.
Yeah. And there's also been some, you know, been some examples of where brilliant fighters or fighters have gone on to be brilliant. They got beat very early on by guys that they shouldn't have got beat to. So the best example is probably Barry McGuigan, who got beat by Chris Eubank's brother, Peter Eubanks. Now, Peter Eubank had a losing record at the time, and Barry was going into his third fight, but he got beat. He lost on points over 8-2s at sort of one of these hotels, and Barry went back and fought Peter again and beat him. But sometimes fighters can get caught out, and they go on to have brilliant careers, but they look back on their first 5 or 6 and go, "Yeah, I got caught out by a kid that should never have got near me." But that's just the jeopardy of boxing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now let's see. You're going to move on from the British fights here, and talk about what happened in Oz and what was a Friday afternoon for y'all, Friday morning for me at like 4:30, which is why I didn't watch it. But Janovic Alimkhanov picking up a win over Mikhailovic. Ninth round stoppage, apparently just toyed with the guy. Justin, thank you for joining us. You were able to see this fight. What did you think of this particular ass kicking, which Janovic seems to hand out about twice a year?
This was, I don't know, this was just one of those fights that you have to fight, I guess, if you have a belt, but the guy was complete crap. The guy he was fighting was terrible. The ref should have stopped it. I mean, he really could have stopped it in the second round if he'd wanted to. They just let it go way too long. The guy had nothing for him. Alakanuli, or however you pronounce it, he's just treading water because there's nobody there to fight. So unless he goes up one weight class, two weight classes at 160, there's just nothing really there right now unless he's just got too much skill. He's fighting random dudes now that nobody's ever heard of, which he's actually, if you look at his career, most of the guys he's fought are random dudes that nobody's ever heard of. And I think this is the way it's going to be for him because he's one of these guys that's like, if you don't have to, why fight him? Because there's no point. But because he doesn't, it's not like he brings a lot of money and a lot of backing, but he's just there. And this is probably I think everybody agrees, this middleweight division sucks. I've been watching boxing, 25 years now, which is sad. I guess sad in itself, but 26, I don't know how long.
It's about as weak as it was after Kelly Pavlik.
Yeah, it's bad. It's just
Taylor.
Yeah, there's nothing here. I mean, if you went up to a hardcore boxing fan, you'd have a hard time for them to even name you the champions right now. Like, name them off. Name off top 5 pound for pound middleweight. I think people would be struggling to come up with that. It's just Alakanuli is a good fighter. He's not a great fighter. If you put him in the middleweight division, 4 or 5 years ago when it was deeper, maybe a little bit, he probably wouldn't be this far as he is now, but he's decent. The guy he fought was just awful. I think the guy before Alakanuli was like, he fought a guy named, I guess everybody here would know him, somebody named Sherrington, Les Sherrington. I think that's his name. He was like 30 something and 17 was the last guy he fought. And the guy before that was like 15-6, I think. And that's what got him a title shot. So y'all didn't miss. If you didn't watch it, you didn't miss anything unless you just like watching some random Russian guy get the hell beat out of him. You didn't miss anything.
Let me I'll tell you what, James, let me throw a fight because Justin's right. This is a historically weak middleweight division. Let me throw a random fight out there for you. What about Alimkhanov against Israel Madrimov?
Madrimov's the one Crawford just fought, isn't he?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's a bit of a tank, man. I first seen him when he fought, what's the Russian guy's name? It was on a Saudi card. Liam Smith fought him before. He's called the White Lion.
Madrimov? Yeah.
No,
that's who we're talking about. It's another Russian guy, isn't it? Start with a K? No?
I can't remember his name anyway, but that was the first time I seen him. Yeah, and I've been impressed with him, and I was impressed against Crawford, even though that fight wasn't the best. I mean, I'm looking at the middleweight rankings now, the ring rankings. I don't even know. I've never seen Adama's fight. We've got our very own Hamza Shiraz there who looked impressive last time out. But to be honest with you, I remember watching Shiraz versus Bradley Skeet at 154, and he hit Bradley Skeet when he was down on the canvas, and it was a pretty brutal one, far worse than that famous Roy Jones Jr. example. And then it was a little bit of home fighter favoritism shown by the referee because he didn't really do anything. The fight was allowed to continue, and then he stopped Bradley Skeet late on, and Skeet was boxing him up really. So I've always had a little bit of a question mark about him, even though he's absolutely massive, he's powerful. He seems to have gone from strength to strength from there. I mean, then you've got like Erislandy Lara, great light middleweight, still decent now after his Danny Garcia win, but he's like 40 something years old. Chris Eubank Jr. is knocking around up there. I mean, Mosley Jr. is at number 10. This is a weak division. I mean, like.
It's Kurbanov who we were trying to think of that match.
That's it. That's your man. Yeah. And he was like, would you have put him up there in, would you put him in any top, 20 of middleweights? I don't think you'd put anyone. There's no stars at middleweight at the minute, and it's a shame because obviously back in the day you had Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr., James Toney. Like super middle in the UK, we had all our stars in the mid-90s, and this isn't like good reading at the moment. I mean, obviously they're all top-level professionals, but there's nothing there that's too exciting for me, at least, anyway.
Yeah. Des, if you are part of Hamza Shiraz's team and you get this call, do you take it?
No, I don't. No, I don't think he's ready for Johnny Beck just yet. I think Johnny Beck's a lot better than we're probably giving him credit for, but I think it's easy to pull him down a little bit because he's just not fighting anybody. There's no one out there to him to fight. And look, if we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping and let's tidy this division up. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Johnny Beck's the IBF champion and the WBO champion. Lara is a WBC champion and Adames is a WBA champion. Am I right when I say that?
I think you might, unless one of them's like an interim or something or other champion.
No, you're right. You're right on that.
Right. So we've got some names here. We've got Lara, we've got Adames, we've got Johnny Beck. Let's throw Shiraz into that. Is Charlo still kicking about a middleweight?
He's been up at 168. Right. The one you're thinking of. The other one fought Canelo, but still has said he wants to fight at 154 again. If he ever does, who knows? Those guys are always in trouble and fucking off and stuff.
They are. James made the point. James, is Eubank still kicking around at middleweight?
Yeah, he is at number. I don't know if I'm looking at some up-to-date rankings, but he's knocking around in like the middle of the pack next to Lara.
Okay.
I mean,
so we've got 6 there, and let's just imagine you could say to Majumov, well, look at that 6. How do you fancy coming up and becoming a 2-weight world champion in under 10 or 11 fights, whatever he's had? So I think we can spice it up. I agree with Justin. I agree with all of you. It ain't the best we've seen at this division, but I think it can be spiced up a little bit. We've just got to get them going. So I think Johnny Beck has done this Australian thing, which they've all done over the last 5 or 6 years. Now put him in, and he's come out and said, just show me the contract, I'll fight Adames or Lara. So that's a fight I'd want to watch. Put Shiraz into that mix. Now, I wouldn't put Shiraz against Johnny Beck, but I'd fancy Shiraz against Lara. I really would. And maybe Shiraz against Adames because of the clash of styles. I just think Johnny Beck just too good a technician, understands angles and can punch. So, and he's come from that part of the world that's a little bit mysterious for me, and they all seem to be really, really good. So I'd put Johnny Beck to one side, but I'd put Shiraz against Lara. I'd put Shiraz against Adames. I'd put Shiraz against Eubank. I think they're all good fights. We can spice this division up, but fights have to be made.
You know, the fact that the ring already has Shiraz at 2 is very telling of the division right now.
and Matty, with Turkey's money, and they've already got a hand-in-glove relationship with Shiraz, there's no reason why they can't bring Johnny Beck over, or a Lara over, or a Adames over, or even entice Eubank Jr. to get going, although I've given up on that one. But I think there are fights that can be made. Are they as exciting as some of the fights we've seen in the last 25 years? Absolutely not. Say that again, Just.
I was going to ask you, here's the question. You said he can't beat Janibek right now. Could he beat Lara or Adames right now?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Who Janibek or Shiraz?
I think he could beat Adames. I think he could beat Adames because he's not impressive. And he could probably outwork Lara if I had to bet money.
Sorry, Justin, you say Janibek. You asking me about Janibek?
I'm talking about Shiraz. You said he couldn't beat Janibek right now, but could he beat Adames Laura right now?
Yeah, I agree. I might agree with you then. So I think I wouldn't put Shiraz against Janibek. I think Janibek's a good fighter, and I think Janibek can go with a lot of fighters. But I think Shiraz is well worth the Lara fight, and he's well worth Adames fight.
He's massive, and Shiraz. He's absolutely gigantic. Like, and he's like, I can't remember.
As well.
Yeah. I mean, every time he touched, who did he fight last time out? He's from my neck of the woods as well.
Yeah, Tyler.
That's it. Yeah. Every time he touched him, he was rocking him all over the place. It was like, before he'd even warmed up or anything like that. I mean, he could go up to like light heavy, really, couldn't he, with that frame?
And he buzzed Ammo Williams really bad as well, didn't he? So he can fight. And going back to the Hamza Shiraz,
Denny was a step back from Ammo Williams in my opinion. Honestly, it was going from world level to back to domestic level briefly, in my opinion. After what we saw, I mean, that's got to be the conclusion.
I've got to say though, Matty, I don't want to do Tyler a disservice on this podcast. He's a non-puncher. There's a huge height disparity. He's an overachiever, and he was fighting a promoted kid who's got everything he hasn't got. It's a hard night for Tyler Denny, that one. I think Tyler Denny and Ammo Williams is a really good fight. And I'm not saying that Tyler Denny don't get to Ammo Williams, but Shiraz is better than both of them. But to come back on what James said, I'd definitely like to see to come back on what James said about Bradley Skeet. I think Bradley's a very good fighter. Bradley's achieved an awful lot in boxing. And when Shiraz got Bradley Skeet, Shiraz was probably a little bit immature, inexperienced. And I think that night, James, Hamza learned an awful lot. And he's conducted himself pretty well since that night. So I think we've got to give him a little bit of credit in the bank. I wouldn't judge him too fiercely on the Bradley Skeet performance at the moment.
Yeah, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, to be honest. Yeah, but it's just always stuck in my mind, and I think it highlighted kind of how blatant, like you say, the promoted kid, how they'll get all the advantages, whatever happens. I think it was more how it highlighted that dynamic in boxing rather than Hamza Shiraz being a dirty fighter or whatever, because I don't think he's a dirty fighter. I mean, you've seen it in the Dubois-Anthony Joshua fight the other week. Like, Dubois landed shots on him when he was down. I didn't think he was being dirty or whatever. It's just that sometimes you see things happen in the ring with like warnings or point deductions, and it's like it's always for the home fighter, and it just sticks in my mind a little bit.
But don't take me out of context. But Andre Ward, had his moments with Darnell Boone, and Tyson Fury had his moments with John McDermott. All good fighters. And Bradley Skeet, Hamza Shiraz had his moment with Bradley Skeet. So on the come up, we want to see these kids tested. And I think Bradley Skeet was his test. And from what I've seen, James, and I understand that it sticks in your throat a little bit, but I think he's learned an awful lot from that Bradley Skeet fight. And I think from what I've seen since, he's a much better version of himself than he was that night. I think he's improved an awful lot.
Yeah, I agree with you, to be honest. And absolutely about Bradley Skeet. I mean, I remember he pushed Frankie Gavin really, really close a good few years ago, around the time where Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank had their fight. And he's always been like British level, like hovering, definitely like veteran status by the time he fought Shiraz. Not to diminish Skeet at all. I think I agree with you. It was a good learning fight. And, you wouldn't want a lad, a prospect coming up, knocking over bowling pins for his first 25 fights because he would learn nothing. So, yeah, I agree with you. They need those fights, prospects.
And Bradley Skeet's a potential banana skin for anyone at domestic level at that time. Former British and Commonwealth champion. And who's the other kid he beat from your neck of the woods? One of my favourite kids. He come from the small halls and ended up becoming a big box office star in the UK. What was his name, James? Fought Paulie Malignaggi, fought Ted Cheeseman.
Oh, Eggington, was it?
Yeah, he beat Sam Egerton he beat Sam Egerton as well when Sam was on top. He fought Frankie Gavin, like you said, done really well against Frankie. He's had some good nights, Bradley, and Bradley was a really good fighter. Former national ABA champion, done really well in the pros. So I think that's a sort of banana skin. I'm agreeing with you. That's a sort of banana skin we want to see our prospects on the way up have to sort of deal with. And I think Hamza went through a moment in time that night. He probably made a few mistakes, but he's not shown anything to me that he's going to make them again. He's moved on.
I'll tell you something that's really ridiculous when you're looking at these ring rankings at middleweight. For 252 weeks, which is, about 8 weeks short of 5 years, Chris Eubank Jr. has been on this list at middleweight, and he has never held a title. That is some pathetic shit right there. Anyhow.
He's an interesting one as well, though, because, he beat one of the Tudonovs back in the day, didn't he? It was 2018 or something like that. Maybe for an interim WBA or something like that. And he was in the super middleweight tournament. Looked really good in the earlier stages. Lost to George Groves in the semi-finals. I don't think, also getting stopped by Liam Smith and coming back and absolutely, that was a domination, the rematch, wasn't it, realistically, after getting stopped? You can't take that away from him. He's made some questionable decisions regarding his opponents, I think. But I don't think you can question his fitness, his commitment, his strength, his conditioning, his dedication to the sport. It's just sometimes you'll see his next opponent announced and you just sigh. It's been a few letdowns as far as his opponents are concerned.
I feel like he should have done something by now. Sorry, guys, for jumping in there. I feel like the time for him to really do something in the sport was 4 to 5 years ago. He credit to him, he took the Billy Joe Saunders fight early, and I don't think he did terribly in that first Billy Joe Saunders fight. But since then, like you said, it's like the Super 6 he knocked out. I just said Super 6 there, by the way. The listeners have been complaining about my audio for about 2 years, and about 2 weeks ago, I got a brand new phone. So the sound is a lot better, but there's some kind of filter on StreamYard that's making me sound like I have a lisp when I listen back. So I just said Super 6 there. I'm looking forward to hearing what that... I sound like a prime Bonnie Langford these days. Nearly broke her back. Phoenix Nights reference there, if you know what I'm talking about. But to get to Eubank, it's been a disappointing career, and I'm starting to think people are starting to warm to him a little bit now, and I don't know if they're warming to him just because Conor Bain is an unbearable fucking prick, and then Eubank is coming out of it a little better. I think he can still sell big fights with his brand name, but in terms of what he's achieved, I think he's fallen short. I think he should have been able to pick up the way matching him, with his the currency he brings to the table with the name, with him himself as a kind of a I wouldn't say star, but a big name, been involved in big fights and is able to bring put asses in seats still. The Conor Bain fight, I think that's going to happen down the line, and I think that's probably what the two of them are looking to cash out on. So it's a pity for him. He had a couple of trainers. He went with Roy Jones for a while. He was doing weird things like impersonating Roy's fighting style and that in the ring, and I like kind of that he beat Smith in the second fight. I think he does get a lot of credit for that. I think he is a hard guy, and he has certain attributes, but he just has a level. And I think they were trying to protect him early, and it just went wrong. That way. I think they were trying to match him right, and it just never happened. But anyway.
Yeah, he has been a disappointment, and if I know anything, it's disappointment. That is that is the career of Eubank. That is also the middleweight division. Let's see. Was there anything else that anybody saw this last week off the top of your head? No. All right. Well, then.
The boys all stay silent like this is a real Zoom call and you're getting called on in work. It's like, what's for the weekend?
No, I'm just making sure we didn't miss anything, and I do not believe that we did. So I guess we're going to go. Let's see here what we got that is not the big stuff right now. On the 13th, yep. So the 13th and the 12th from Tokyo, that is definitely going to be one before the next show is what I'm looking for. So let's see here. Let's go first. Oh my gosh, to New Jersey. Let's see here. Emmanuel Rodriguez against Khalid Twady. I think I'm saying that right. That's a bantamweight fight. Nothing else interesting on there. I do not assume that will be on television. But on that same day, if you want to wake up early, and I think this is an upset brewing here. They're going to have Notshinga is taking on Masamichi Yabuki. Rob, why do we know the name Masamichi Yabuki? Well, it's because he's a puncher who has a win over Kenshiro Teraji. That is why we know the name of Yabuki. And he is also paying 2-1. He's my underdog pick of the week. So obviously Notshinga by knockout.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any of those names that you just rattled off there, let alone be able to pronounce them. So I don't think I'm in a fit position to offer any insights.
Siva Notshinga. That's about as best as I can do there.
Notshinga sounds like what a fucking Albanian writes back at 5 a.m. to a WhatsApp on a Saturday night.
Sounds like a personal experience that I cannot relate to.
Not me either. I just hear these things, you know that way.
So I don't know if any of you guys have interest in that fight, 108-pound battle. I think that actually is pretty interesting. Will I wake up in the morning to watch it? I doubt it. But I do expect that one to be a good fight and an upset victory. Man, so much bias against the little guys. Let's see here. Then we'll go one day further. We're going to go one day further. And then the day after that, you're going to have another fight from Japan. They're having like 3 nights in a row. It's insane. This one, you're going to have the other Inoue brother, Takuma, taking on Saya Tsutsumi. Then you're going to have a title fight between Shokichi Iwata and Joro Noriega. And then the aforementioned Kenshiro Teraji trying it out at flyweight. For the first time, taking on Christopher Rosales for the vacant WBC belt, and Seigo Yuri Akui taking on Tenanachi Charumpak. I guarantee you I said that one wrong. I think he still holds a belt at 112 pounds, but they don't mention it on ESPN. Maybe it's because there's a bunch of them floating around. Who knows? That particular card, I hope somebody has something to say about that one because there's some good names on that card.
I'd hand it over to James if I was you, Matty. Give him a baptism of fire for his first
show.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm all right. You know, thank you.
Is that Japanese?
Oh, welcome along, by the way, dude. Sorry for fucking cutting across you earlier. It's just part of the course.
No, you didn't at all. Nice to meet you, man. Yeah, I'm struggling to come up with something interesting to say about Japanese fighters I've not heard of. But
this is where we need the insights of Andy P. But the Rangers are playing at the moment, aren't they? So he's probably preoccupied. But he knows about the lower weights and the Japanese cards. That's actually in future. If anyone has a particular interest in Japanese boxing and these cards are coming up, you want to jump on and give your 2 cents because I don't have a fucking clue and I don't have any interest in finding out either. So, if anyone wants to jump on and do that, they can.
That's a shame. Well, a couple of these fights could be good, and they're around noon y'all's time, so that's not terrible. Get yourself.
Is Takuma the one that can't punch? Is that the Inoue brother that can't punch?
Yeah, he's not much of a puncher.
Yeah, I remember.
What are they?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. What are they? What is the Matthew Hatton to Ricky Hatton scale of Inoue versus Inoue's brother? Where are we a better version?
That's a good question.
Of Matthew.
Slightly narrower, but not enough to matter.
Gotcha. Or we're talking Canelo's older brother kind of style.
Yeah, because I would say that's better because he actually held the title at one point in time and lost it to Austin Trout, if I recall.
Didn't Juan Manuel Marquez have a brother that was still a good fighter, but no?
Raphael was fantastic. He's the one that had the 4 fights. The only 3 of them mattered with Israel Vasquez.
Yeah, no, I can't see that in there. So that's a really good comparison, Rob. Ricky Hatton to Matthew, and I like that comparison. I like the other Inoue brother, but it's just unfortunate. His other brother, the other one, is a generational great. So there's always going to appear to be such disparity between the two. But I've seen him box a few times, and he's a very capable operator.
You got to think he's going to be good technically. Anyway, a couple of brothers over there in Japan. But there's actually here where we're at 2 good fighting brothers. Des will definitely remember these guys. Rafael and Gabriel Rueles from the 80s. 2 handy lads. But anyway, I think one of them beat Gary Jacobs from Scotland at one stage. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, go ahead.
Fuck, that's random. That's so fucking random. Anyways, the plan.
Wait till I tell you that Gary Jacobs was a Scottish Jewish guy. That's going to make it more random for you. Got beaten by a Mexican.
Gary Jacobs could fight, Rob. Gary Jacobs could really fight, couldn't he? Sorry,
Go fighter. Go fighter. Did he fight Pat Barrett as well?
I don't recall. He might have done.
Maybe just the timelines are crossing over in my head now at this stage. You know that way, maybe.
Matty, can you think of any brothers in boxing, Matty? Random, go on, just a pair of brothers, go on.
Kameda, Charlos.
James, have you got a pair of brothers, James?
Ennis.
A couple of brothers. The Klitschko's got to be in it.
Oh yeah. What about you, Justin? A pair of brothers.
Pass.
Well, who's the kid that Lloyd Honeyghan beat his mate? Curry. There was two Currys, wasn't there? Don and the other one.
The Don Curry and God, what was his brother? Yeah, I know Don was the better one. I think
there was two Currys.
Like John Fisher's house on a Saturday night.
You guys never had Japanese curry? It's pretty good. So, speaking of the Inoue brothers, when it comes to Takuma, Junto Nakatani actually there's been discussions that he might fight both of them. He will, because both him and Takuma, I think, hold titles at 118. So they would have that fight. And then he would fight the better Inoue at 122 pounds, and potentially would be Inoue's last fight at 122 before checking the waters at 126. And I think Nakatani could be a very interesting fight for the better Inoue Naoya, considering just he's a hell of a puncher, and that uppercut of his is a vile weapon. Man, we even touch on the real Inoue, and you guys have nothing today. I tell you. Anyhow, let's see here. Let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this whole thing, and we'll work at the bottom. We know what we're getting to. Let's see what we have on the docket here. All right, here's one that I don't know much about, but I bet you that Des can tell me more on this one. Ben Whitaker against Liam Cameron.
Do you know who Liam Cameron is, Matty?
Is he Chantel Cameron's brother?
No. He's he was from the north of England, around sort of Sheffield way. National amateur champion, turns pro as a middleweight, becomes a Commonwealth champion at middleweight, gets tested and has got cocaine in his system. Gets a 5-year ban from the British Boxing Board of Control. So I've just quickly proofread it for you. He has a 5-year layout where he puts on a lot of weight, then loses a lot of weight, comes back as a light heavyweight. So his story's created quite a lot of attention in this country because we've seen loads of people use performance-enhancing drugs and get 6 months bans or 12 months bans. And he had some cocaine in his system, which is a recreational drug, not making it right, but it was a performance enhancing.
Yeah, unless you're using it in the corner during the fight, you're not going to see any performance enhancing effects.
And I don't want to do Liam an injustice. I don't know what his plea was. I don't know how he went about it. I don't know what sort of representation he had. So I don't want to do the kid justice, but long story short, he got a 5-year ban from the Board of Control. So from a middleweight Commonwealth champion, from a former national ABA champion, he's now got a 5-year sit down. He's come back as a light heavy, and he's had a couple of outings, and the one we last saw on Channel 5 was against Lyndon Arthur, and he took Lyndon, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think it was to a split. He boxed really well that night, and Lyndon caught him a few times, and Liam didn't go away. So this professional boxing thing really means something to Liam Cameron. Now, he's boxing against Ben Whitaker, who's a special talent. Ben, I'm not quite sure if Ben's a puncher, but he's got fast hands. He's got really good angles. He shows a lot of feints. I don't think Liam Cameron beats Ben Whitaker, but it's going to be Ben Whitaker's hardest fight. So that gives it a little bit of jeopardy.
Now, Now, let me ask you: Is James, is Liam Cameron the kind of fighter where if Ben Whitaker decides to get cocky and stupid, he could pay for it?
Well, I wouldn't have remembered that fight against Lyndon Arthur unless Des mentioned it, but I do remember watching it, and I think Lyndon Arthur is a good measure of how competent someone is because I really rate Arthur. I mean, you've seen, okay, say what you want about Anthony Yard, but he's probably slicker and a better fighter than people want to give him credit for just because of the whole, social media presence. But Lyndon Arthur's like top draw domestically. So if you can go to a split with him, you've got to be half decent. But a 5-year ban for cocaine in your system is so harsh. That's like draconian levels. So he's had a massive layoff. Now we spoke earlier a little bit about Walter Fury. Now this is a slightly different circumstance. Liam Cameron's got more professional experience, but how much of that time can you get back? Your lifestyle when you're away from the ring, the emotional impact, the physical impact. He's of a level. He's competent enough to cause problems, but with Ben Whitaker, you've got somebody who is, as Des said, athletically gifted, supremely confident. Now, whether he's as good as all the antics would probably suggest, is he the next Nazim Hamed? Probably not. He's a little bit more conventional, doesn't punch as hard, but he's embraced the showmanship side of it. I'm not sure if he has the kind of power where he's going to be shutting people down the higher up in the levels that he goes, but Liam Cameron can definitely test him, can definitely push a pace on him. But Whitaker's just on his own vibe. He's tall, rangy, really spiteful jab, good backhand, unorthodox combinations, unpredictable, very quick. He's a tall order for most people at domestic and European level right now.
That might be a good one. This undercard honestly has a few bright spots on it, a few fights on there as well. We're going to see Sky Nicholson and Raven Chapman over there. Interesting in its own right. I think one of the first big female fights that's been held in Saudi Arabia. So interesting enough there. Chris Eubank Jr. against Camille Szeremeta. Rob, I'm sure you're going to make sure that you're home for this fight in particular. I bet it's high on your list.
For which fight?
Eubank Jr. against Camille Szeremeta.
Yeah, it's going to be one-way traffic, isn't it? Hopefully Eubank fights at a pace and gets that one stopped as quick as possible, so we don't have to sit through it. If you'd expect him to come through this via stoppage, he tends to start slow, does a bit of posing. I'd like to see him put his shots together early, make a bit of a statement, and finish the guy and go on to the next fight. He seems to be making a bit of a comeback. He's with Boxer now, Ben Shalom. What he can do for him, I don't know. Maybe it's more what he can do for Ben Shalom than the other way around. I see him doing an interview with Castillo and that he's trying to put himself back out there. So maybe this is leading somewhere. I think it's leading to the Conor Ben fight once that ban is up. Don't give a shit about that fight. Didn't at the start, and I hope the Eubank doesn't have to get down to 160 as part of that. You would think he's calling the shots, given everything that's gone on. But hopefully an early night, man. I don't want to sit through that.
Yeah, this fight's at 160. It seems like he's kind of hanging on there. So I don't know. We'll see.
Is at 160. All right, okay. But did he have to get below 160 for the last one, or 60?
The first one, the first one when they got it canned, it was supposed to be get down to 157, and then he looked like shit against Smith.
Yeah, that's interesting if he's hanging, because I would have thought he's obviously. I don't think 160 is after being up around 68 and being later on in his career. And I didn't think that 60 he could make it. Obviously, he lives the life of an athlete, but there's only so much fucking body fat you can shave off, when a guy walks around ripped anyway. It's not like he balloons in weight or anything. So interesting. That's making it a little bit more interesting, but still, I hope he makes a short work.
Yeah, optimistically, but I just get a feeling it's going to go all 12 stupid rounds. Also, let's see here on this one. This is a fight, Justin, that I find particularly pointless. Jai Opetaia against Jack Massey. I don't see this one. You want to talk about one-way traffic? I think that this is going to be super easy and quick work for Opetaia, and there's not a lot of great fights at cruiserweight to be made, but my God, there's better fights than this.
Is Jack Massey the guy that moved up to heavyweight the other day, like recently? Or is this the guy?
I think he had a fight against. Did he fight Parker at heavyweight?
Yeah, I think
No,
this is the guy.
Matty, I've got to overrule you here. No, I think you've sold Jack Massey short a bit there. I think you beat Opetaia, but Jack Massey went 10 rounds with Joe Parker up at heavyweight, came back down, beat Isaac Chamberlain for, I think it was a British cruiserweight title. I've got to tell you, of all the guys Opetaia has boxed, in terms of he boxed Zorro, he boxed Thompson. No, outside of Raiders, this might be Opetaia's hardest opponent outside of Raiders.
You think? Really?
Honestly, he's in good form, Jack Massey. Jack Massey, I watched Jack Massey at your call lose a split to Richard Riakporhe, and I thought he won that night. That's Richard Riakporhe who fought for a world title, or did he have a world title? I think he fought for a world title.
He had a
against
world
Dylan
title.
Smith. Right. So
yeah, that was a unification.
Right. So I had him winning that night, but he lost a split. No complaints. It was a close one. He's done 10 with Parker. He beat Isaac Chamberlain, who's a very capable operator and is a British champion and possibly at European level. I think Jack Massey's finally being pushed in the right direction. I don't think he beats Opetaia, but if anyone can show me, braid this to one side. If anyone can show me a better opponent Opetaia's beaten than Jack Massey, I'd like to see it.
You might be right, and I think that speaks really poorly of the resume of Opetaia at this point in time, as you mentioned that.
I think you're going to be impressed with Jack Massey. He's going in 22 wins, 22 losses. He's a respectable puncher. He's got a 50% KO record. I don't think he beats Opetaia, but we've seen Opetaia against Zorro. We've seen Opetaia against Thompson. Them guys are area level fighters. So we mustn't put Massey in with that group. So as a Brit, and I know we've got more of a hand on it than you have, Massey, because we're over here watching him. We watch these kids come up. I think Massey asks questions of Opetaia. I think he gives him a good rounds. I don't think he beats him, Matty. I think Opetaia's on a different level. But I think Jack Massey's. I think someone correct me. Did he beat Isaac for the European title? Or was it just a British title? But he holds a respectable domestic belt, and I think he deserves this one.
I don't know. I'll tell you what, Justin, that was a decent pitch, wasn't it? I'm a little bit more interested in this fight than I was 5 minutes ago.
I'm not interested in this fight. I get what he's saying, and he did take Parker. That but I still think that Opetaia will. I think it might take him. I think Massey will make him go a few rounds, but I still think after 6 he's going to knock him out. I mean, Massey's decent, but God, Parker looked so bad that night when he fought him. Parker looked terrible. And so I don't give him a lot of credit for going 10 rounds with that version of Parker, because Parker looked like shit. But I do agree with the Chamberlain was a good win. But yeah, I think Opetaia will eventually knock him out. I mean, but he will give him a fight. I agree with Dez on that. He will come out and give it more than the Thompson guy did, who was just, God, he was pitiful too. But I think that eventually Opetaia, he's another guy that's got to be stepped up after this fight too. It's time to find something for him too, because look at the last guy he fought, and I mean, I'm not trying to knock Massey, but look at him. You've got to do something after this one.
Just to come in there, Justin. I've just checked. He beat Isaac for the Commonwealth and the vacant European title. So Jack Massey's fighting Opetaia as the current reigning European champion and Commonwealth champion. I think he's got a degree of respectability, that fight.
No, it does. I mean, I said Massey's decent, but he's just not good enough to win this fight. I mean, he'll give Opetaia a decent fight, but I mean, that's just me. Like I said, a lot of people, just because
I agree, mate. Yeah, I agree.
Like I said earlier, Opetaia, after this fight, he has to, unless he just looks awful, he has to either piss or get off the pot. It's time to do something, because I mean, you can't keep fighting just high. I mean, you got to do something. This is enough's enough. I mean, Thompson, I don't know what happened with that one. And then Massey's decent, but he's over here. nobody knows who he is. So it's time to, like, if he wants to make money and he wants to really push it, you've got to do something besides fighting these guys.
The only way that he really gets a fight that matters in our part of the world to any degree is if Ramirez beats Billiam Smith in this unification fight, and then Opetaia could fight Ramirez over here. I think that's the only way it matters. He'll get a foothold in the U.S. in any degree, because he won't get it fighting Billiam Smith. With the only places that will make money would be Oz or the U.K. So
if Billiam Smith wins that fight, sorry, it's quickly, mate. If Billiam Smith wins that fight, he's got like a nice little resume for himself there, isn't it? I mean, if you compare him and Jay Opetaia, like before the Bradis fight, the first one, which is like both wins, great. Like I really rate Bradis, but like before that, he kind of came out of nowhere, and like I wonder, like how do they stack up against each other? Do you know what I mean? Like, would you necessarily pick Jay Opetaia against, say, Lawrence Okoli? Do you know, like, how do you think that matchup goes? I mean, I know Okoli's kind of messing around at bridgerweight a little bit, but would you pick Opetaia against Okoli as a kind of a barometer against how he stacks up against Billiam Smith?
You know, I think that would be an interesting fight in its own way, but you kind of got me thinking actually about the idea that if Billiam Smith wins this fight, I kind of think he might have a little bit of an argument for fighter of the year.
Yeah, that's decent. Like, and obviously he does it in I don't think Chris Billiam Smith was that highly touted like prospect. I don't think he was meant to go as far as he has. But the facts are he's beaten two really good fighters in Riakporhe and Okoli to attain world champion status. And if he beats Zerdo, I mean, obviously there are arguments to be had about stepping up through the weights, etc. But yeah, I think that puts him in prime position to at least be considered like probably the best cruiserweight around for sure.
Yeah, and whatever way it goes with Zerdo or Billiam Smith winning that fight, I think Opetaia against the winner, you got to go that way. I kind of think the Opetaia is a pretty big dude. I don't know if he'll be hanging around cruiserweight forever, so I'd rather see something like that get off the ground sooner rather than later. But let's see here. While I got you there, actually, James. A fight that I think is definitely worth our time is the rematch between Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clarke. The first one, an absolute banger of a fight. I think it was a literal draw, and I personally will be tuning into this one for sure.
Yeah, that first fight was great, to be honest. And Fraser Clarke, I think the first time he looked. Like started to attain the kind of form that was promised when he turned into a professional. Did he fight Dave Allen? Am I right in saying that? Like he looked pretty spiteful in that fight. And Fabio Wardley is one where like he came to prominence during COVID times, like fighting in Eddie's backyard. I think like unorthodox style, very limited amateur pedigree, and look how far he's gone. He's climbing up to world level, arguably. So yeah, I think this is an interesting one. The dynamic of the accomplished amateur versus the overachiever, possibly transitioning from the white collar area, if you know what I mean. The thematically it's all there, and to add to the fact that they had a very well fought, close first fight, I think it's got all the ingredients to recapture that moment, really.
Yeah, I haven't quite made a pick on this one. Rob, is there a direction you're going?
Sorry, I'm off fight again. Sorry.
The rematch of
I'm multitasking here. Sorry.
The rematch of Wardley and Clarke.
Oh, Big Fraser, I think, is going to win this one. Inside the distance. That's about as much as you're getting out of that. It was a good fight, a good entertaining fight. I think Big Fraser put it together and get him out of there.
Yeah, it was the first one was a really good fight. It's a very rare one. I'm looking forward to a heavyweight rematch, but this particular time, I think that I am. So, I don't know. I don't know. Des, where are you going on this one?
I'm agreeing with all the boys. I think it's a brilliant fight. The first one was the fight of the year. Two guys that emptied themselves and had nothing left in the end. Fraser got a really bad gash across his nose, blood everywhere. But I think he touched. Fabio got a gash across his nose, blood everywhere. But I didn't Fabio touch Clarke a couple of times and put him down, or did he go down once, or did he go down twice? So Fabio can get to Fraser, and they'll just try and channel that now, so that they've got a little bit more in the tank if they can get to him again, if they can try and close the show. And when you look at Fabio Wardley's career, to pick up on what James said, this is a kid that's come out the unlicensed scene, the white collar scene. He's had no amateurs, and it's probably heavyweight boxing is the only division you could probably do this in. And he's done a little bit of a Matt Skelton, and he wasn't really meant to beat Simon Vallily, who was a standout England international, but he stopped him in 3. Then they gave him the Richard Lartes and the Eric Molina. Then they brought him in with Nick Webb, which was a hard fight. Damien won. Then they brought him in with Nathan Gorman. 19-1 coming in, Nathan. He stops him in 3. But the big one, the one that you've really got to attach a lot of credit to, was beating David Adelaide, stopping him in 7 rounds. David Adelaide was a British champion, 7-0, national ABA champion. That's a big scalp for Fabio Wardley, and he's arrived. The first one with Fraser Clarke, and you've got to remember, Fraser's an Olympic medalist. He's been around the world with GB for the best part of a decade. He's had the best of everything, all the facilities you can ask of. And somehow, Fabio Wardley's closed that gap to a split decision or a draw. He's done it with a broken nose and blood all over his face, and he dropped Fraser. So my head is telling me that Fraser gets better, improves, and gets to him this time. But there's something in my heart that thinks Fabio's not going to go quietly. And Fabio can punch. He's proven he can get to Fraser. I've never seen much in Fraser's career that suggests to me that he's an explosive, dynamic guy. In that previous one, Fraser seemed to not know how to put his foot down, not know how to close the show, because he had Fabio hurt as well. I can't give you a pick now. We'll probably save that for the show nearer to the fight, because I want to see how this week goes. I think this week will be important, and the weigh-in will tell us a lot. But I think Fabio is definitely a live dog in this one. He goes in as British champion and Commonwealth champion, and I think he's a live dog in this fight.
I kind of want to see here what the odds are at. You made me curious.
There won't be much in it, Massey. There won't be much in it.
Let's see here. No, I don't want to log in.
I like Wardley in this fight. No, there's something about the way he tends to stack up against people with a lot of amateur experience. Like you said, against David Adelaide, there's something about his timing and his rhythm that's like, it seems to knock him off kilter a little bit, and add to that his toughness and his hand speed. I mean, his uppercuts are like pretty dangerous weapons as well. So not by much. I don't say it too confidently, but I feel like I'm going with Fabio with this one.
You fancy Fabio in this one, dear James?
Yeah, but again, not too confidently. With these heavyweights and with the kind of attritional fight they had last time, it could go any kind of way, really.
I mean, what I like about Fabio in this fight is he's got the size and weight on his side. I think he's big enough that's the size of a heavyweight, and I think Fraser might be too big. And if it goes down the stretch, if we get into that championship round territory and it's fast paced, I mean, Fabio was out on his feet last time, so I wonder how they. But that's why I want to see the weigh-in. I want to see how they do the weight these two.
Yeah, I feel like as well with Fraser Clarke, like because he's got all that experience. Sometimes that experience can lead to the kind of calmness, and that can lead to complacency in some situations. Maybe sometimes he doesn't feel like he needs to put his foot down on the gas. Maybe he's happy working behind his jab and working all the technical skills that he's been developing in the early stage of his career. But that cuts both ways, if you know what I mean, especially if you need to put your foot down, if you need to finish with, say, if you're down on the cards and you need a knockout, that could go both ways for him.
Well, you gotta bet 3 on Wardley to win 2 roughly, and you gotta bet 5 to win 6 on Clarke.
Yeah. He's pretty close, isn't it?
It is pretty close. Only slightly wider than the main event of, here we are, Artur Beterbiev against Dimitri Bivol. Does it feel like we've been waiting forever? Yes, because this fight was supposed to happen on June 1st, everyone. But here we are. Should nothing strange happen, we will have it. A real battle for light heavyweight supremacy. Who cares if the title or the ranking organizations do something dumb with the titles, this, that, or the other? We know this is the battle for who is the man at light heavyweight. Bivol, just a little bit of a favorite. This fight did open up about dead even, so there's been a bit of the betting money going towards Dimitri Bivol. This fight, I'm having a tough one on this. I feel like even if Bivol wins 5 of the first 6 rounds, you're not going to see the odds change a whole lot, Justin, because I think the experts who are backing Artur Beterbiev, they're probably doing it on the basis of thinking a late stoppage after walking down Bivol and just bringing it to him. How do you see it unfolding?
Well, if this had happened, this has been going on for 2 years now, at least 3. So if this had happened when they first discussed it, I was on Beterbiev. That's who I 100% thought was going to win. But now, look how many fights he's been in, hard fights. It's not like Beterbiev over the last couple of years has been in easy fights. He's taken a lot of shots, and now he's gotten hurt, twice?
Yeah, he is prone to getting injured between fights lately.
So right now, his age, I have completely changed my thinking on this. So I'm thinking Bivol, tight decision. I think he's just so athletic. I think he's going to do enough. And with Beterbiev, I just think he's going to finally slow down enough. And Bivol, we know he's not going to slow down. We know what he can do. So in my opinion, like I said, this has all changed just because the fight has just kept going and kept going. Sort of like the Pacquiao Mayweather. It just kept going, and then Pacquiao kept getting older and kept getting hurt. It's sort of that same kind of thing where Beterbiev, you just don't know how much his body, what he's got left, or how much he's, these little injuries that we don't even know about. So in my opinion, I'm going to say Bivol, close decision, 115, 113, something like that. But I think you're right what you said. I think he's going to outwork him, get enough rounds in that he's just going to take it late. And I'm a huge Beterbiev fan. I think most people on here are, because just the way he fights. But I just think Bivol. I've just changed my mind just because of how long it's taken. So I'm going Bivol.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting that, Rob, you'd have to maybe venture to say that the Artur Beterbiev who fought Gvozdyk, 5, 6, whatever years ago it is now, was a better fighter than today. He's pushing 40. I'd have to think that the version of Beterbiev Gvozdyk fought is better than the one that Bivol might see.
Yeah, and like Justin said, there's been a big delay on the fight. Should have been made. Injuries, etc. have delayed it. Was it a cut? I'm not sure it was a cut or an injury that delayed it, but what I think is, I was looking back at the Beterbiev and Yard fight, and Yard had spells of success because obviously Yard's a massive puncher, and there is weaknesses in Beterbiev. When I say weaknesses, this fella won 20 fights with 20 knockouts, so there is weaknesses, and he's been on the floor a couple of times about how do you exploit the weakness and how do you actually stop him, because it seemed in the spells that Yard, when Yard hurt him and Yard felt like he was getting on top, then Beterbiev would just spin him into the corner and then just started going to work brutally and just manhandling. Felt like we can speak for fucking. We've spoken for years about how scary a guy Beterbiev is, from the sound of his punches, the sparring partner tales about how hard he hits.
He's close to a real life Drago. He's close to a real life
he's
Drago.
Close. He's up there. He's a fucking scary guy. There's been a couple of fucking adverse findings as well that they say are naturally produced in his body. So that fucking tells you enough. You've seen the training regime. You've heard these guys, Scully, all these guys talk about what he's like in training. He goes back to train the next day in the gym, spins barbells on the fucking tip of his finger and stuff. He's a hard bastard, like. But not to take anything away from any of the guys that he's fought, because I think they're all fucking reputable, and his record of scary KOs against guys versus Bivol's UD, I think since Trent Broadburst and Sullivan Barrera, I think that's when Bivol just decided he stopped fucking knocking people out and just took everybody to fucking snooze town with the decisions. Not me, because I always think he's a tidy fighter, but I think Yard had chances to get further ahead in that fight if he had any kind of a jab. And one thing about Bivol's jab, he's one of the best in the biz off the jab. Like, he's got a high work rate and he's hard to hit, and he's fucking strong fucker too. I don't think Beterbiev is necessarily going to be able to just pin him to the ropes or force him there. Now, he might break him down, of course he can. He could break him down to the body. He could sink him with a body shot. He could absorb everything off Bivol and kind of stop him later rounds. But this is one for me. I don't see Beterbiev winning by stoppage. I think this is where the knockout streak comes to an end, and Bivol's going to nick it. I think he's going to be able to get on his bike in the right spots. I think he's going to be on the jab the whole time. You could go back to the Joe Smith fight. I think Joe Smith kind of caught him close to an end of a round and had him in trouble. But he doesn't really, he has a bit of a poker face, Bivol. Like, he doesn't show when he's hurt. So he's been in with big punches. So Sullivan Barrera could bang in his day. Joe Smith can bang, but he hasn't been in with anything like Beterbiev. But alternatively, I don't think Beterbiev has been up against a fighter as good as Bivol. That's why it's a 50-50 fight. That's why we've been clamoring for it. And that's why people are split on it. But I just think Bivol, for all of his fucking boring nights that he gave us, he has game plan, and it's so hard to offset his rhythm. You really have to do something to get to him, and it's, he doesn't have the desire to kind of stop fellas that are levels below him, so he goes through the gears. But I think in this fight he's going to be switched on at all times, which he's going to have to be. But I think he's going to box clever, and I think he's going to nick a decision here.
It's interesting is the odds on the fight to go the distance are roughly about the same on fight whether it goes to Beterbiev or Bivol. Bivol is paying about the same as the fight to go the distance, and Beterbiev is paying about the same for it to not go the distance. So it's interesting to look at it that way. It seems like nobody, and oftentimes though in these situations, James, you find yourself shocked because we're all looking at it and thinking, okay, the obvious is Bivol by decision or Beterbiev by knockout. Watch it end up being Bivol by knockout or Beterbiev by decision, because that's how this stupid sport works.
Well, Beterbiev does cut, doesn't he? I mean, the Marcus Brown fight, that was pretty severe before he ended up winning by stoppage. And I wonder whether Beterbiev cares he's got this knockout streak, or obviously it's used as a marketing tool to like turn him into this monster, which obviously he is. But does that lead to a situation where observers, judges, fans think that with every round that Bivol makes it through with a bit of success, that all of a sudden looks like a bigger victory? You know, when you're chipping away, probably pinching rounds, and you're not getting knocked out by this monster. That could affect the perception of the fight. But for me, I think Bivol should win this fight pretty handily. Obviously, Beterbiev is world-class, no doubt about it, but nearly 40 years old is not prime time, and he's had a lot of injuries, and he's been in some brutal fights, and I feel like their styles match up in a way that benefits Bivol. He's so busy with his hands, and just on the edge of that distance where he can touch you, but you can't touch him. His footwork patterns, I just don't see him getting pinned down. Now, obviously, Beterbiev's the kind of puncher that half a shot could, knock you senseless and enter the finish of the fight. Of course, take that for granted. But I think in this fight, given the occasion, and I think the time that they're meeting each other, like Bivol being the age that he is and Beterbiev being the age that he is, the differing momentums in their careers at this point, I feel like Bivol's going to do it.
Yeah, and it's, Bivol's got about a half-inch height on Beterbiev, but Beterbiev has about an inch of reach on him, interestingly enough. But it's 39 versus 33. Is this the same fight, as good of a fighter as fought Vosdik? I'll tell you what, Des, what I think is going to be great, regardless of how this fight ultimately goes, is for the boxing purists out there, you're going to get to see a couple of real artists ply their craft, and it is a brutal art form. But what's amazing about both of these guys, and if you're watching, the subtleties will be interesting, is there's no wasted movement really between the two of them. Whether it's their clever footwork or the way that they throw punches, there's no extra meat on the way these guys go about their business.
Yeah, this is one of them fights where you don't need to see the weigh-in. You don't need to worry about fight week because they're both going to turn up immaculate. They're both going to be ice cold, give nothing away. They epitomise that part of the world they come from. They've been brilliant amateurs. They've been brilliant pros, and they're both each other's kryptonite. And it's just, how do you see it going? And I've listened to Rob and James and Justin, and you can't fault what anyone said because everything people are saying about these guys is correct. And there's so many ways this fight could play out, depending on styles, techniques, approaches. I'm convinced that Beterbiev offers something really subtly different to Bivol. So usually Bivol fights taller guys that try to out jab him, but their problem is their jab becomes Bivol's rangefinder, and he gets the measure off of their jab. But Bivol throws unusually short punches, and he throws them from almost like a square-on stance. And he does that because he presses you all the time, and he takes you into little corridors, and he suffocates you, and he forces you to throw, not because you really want to throw, not because you're in the best position to throw, but because you have to throw to keep him away, to create some distance. Bivol is the master of distance. And I think that's going to be his undoing. When he tries to create distance with Beterbiev, I think that's when Beterbiev is going to land and get to him. I look at their dimensions. Beterbiev is so thick set. His head's bigger. His shoulders are wider. His chest, his back, his arms. I just can't see how, if you take the Canelo fight to one side, because Canelo has come up from sort of middleweight to super middleweight up to light heavy, and it was a step too far. If we take that to one side, I've not seen a win like a Campbell or a Cloud or a Govodnich on his record, and they were really impressive performances by Beterbiev. I go back to it. They're each other's kryptonite, and I think the suffocating process that Beterbiev puts his opponents under, where he gets close and throws short-range punches, where he doesn't overreach, where his core's centered to everything he does, I think he'll force Bivol to throw. We're not when he's in a good position to throw, and I think that's when he'll get to him. So I think Beterbiev beats Bivol. I can't visualize Bivol getting stopped, but also can't visualize anyone going 12 rounds if you're letting Beterbiev get close to you. I'm gonna have to put that one, in I don't know section, but what I am certain of, I'm going for Beterbiev to win.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I kind of feel like I want to bet Bivol to win, but at the same time, I'm going to be watching it and looking to see if there's any changes that show me that Beterbiev is starting to wear down on Bivol, and see what kind of number I can get on Beterbiev late. And it's just one of those things, though.
That's a good bet, Matty. That's a good bet. Did you? Yeah, Beterbiev late. Anything after 9 would be a really good bet, I think.
But I feel like also, like, as the fight goes on, even if Bivol is showing himself to be well ahead, you're never going to see the fight be quite as wide in the odds as you might see normally when a fighter is behind and needs a stoppage, because people have that much faith in Beterbiev to ultimately walk his man down and take the fight out of him.
I agree, and it's that walking down process and Beterbiev isn't like what we saw Nick Ball last night, or he isn't like that typical pressure fighter that swarms you like a Figueroa does. He does it in such a cold, controlled, calm manner where he shuffles along. He don't walk sight. He shuffles into space, and he believes in his toughness.
Yeah, he puts you where he wants you. He's like a
does.
He's
Yes.
the closest thing. You always see these things coming out of Eastern Europe where you see them like training with bears and all. He's like fighting a bear. You know what I mean? It's like fucking. He looks like a
Yeah.
bear. He's a killer instinct when he puts you. He stalks you and puts you where he wants you. But to counter what Des is saying, I'm not disagreeing with him. If I think Beterbiev is going to win the fight, that's probably how it's going to happen. But I just think Bivol is so active. And yes, the resumes don't stack, but I think Bivol has been such a high level above the guys that he's beaten that he hasn't even needed to go through the gears to beat them. So that's why you get the UDs. And maybe he doesn't have that killer instinct to put fellas away. But I do think he can offset Beterbiev all night, keep him off balance. And it's the little walks that Bivol's goal where he's going to take him around the corner and walk him. I don't think it's going to be as easy for Beterbiev just to shuffle in and close distance like he was with the likes of Anthony Yard or Gvozdyk, who's going to come to him. Bivol's not going to come to him. Obviously, he's not stupid. Like, he's going to exchange, I think, when it's smart. And then he's going to turn corners on him all night and see can he keep up with him. That's what I think is going to happen. But
well, you remember, was it Marcus Brown? I mean, he had a lot of success. I mean, that's who Beterbiev fought, right? Marcus Brown.
Yeah. I mean, a guy with a deep amateur background, very clever fighter.
He's going to bring the same type of fight that Bivol did. I mean, sort of in that same realm. And I mean, he had success. I mean, he was landing some serious shots. And he was doing some really good things. You got to imagine Bivol would beat the hell out of Marcus Brown as well. So it's like, that's the kind of stuff I look at. It's like, if Brown can do that, then Bivol's going to do that at another level. And that's the kind of things you got to look at too.
Well, and I'm kind of curious as far as it goes. Like, I don't think maybe the Canelo fight, we might have seen Bivol in second gear. I think we had to see Beterbiev go through the gears to beat Gvozdyk. Joining us from Seconds Out, Take Ames, Eamon Khan, as known to the greater public. Ames, I got to ask you, man, do you think that what we're going to see in this fight is Bivol going up to a level that we have yet to see him hit in a fight before? Because ultimately that is what is necessary to beat this monster that's in front of him.
Well, this is a guy who kind of has a little bit of form of that. There's kind of the whispers and the feelings, and I think Bivol has said as much, that he sort of underperformed, or at least fought within himself when he fought Craig Richards and made that a tighter fight so that he could lure Canelo in. And then he kind of really showed his cards of how good he is. And Canelo thought maybe he was getting, beating a good, credible opponent, but one that he would be a favorite in the fight, and it just didn't turn out to be his favor. So there might be more levels to Bivol, but we've discussed this in the past with Des. We had like a conversation as to whether it's really in Bivol or not. We've got to see that this coming weekend if he truly does have that another level, that elite kind of push on through the gears like Beterbiev will do and has kind of shown in his career. He can't be reserved in this fight at all because he's got someone who's going to be coming on to him from the first moment. My real worry about this, I haven't listened to the pod as you've been going, so I'll catch up with it after the fact, but I don't know if it's been mentioned, but there are whispers within kind of the industry right now as to where Beterbiev is and whether he's kind of looking a little bit older and whether he's been suddenly kind of aged as he heads into this fight. And that's a worry, because not only that, you factor in the injury that he's had to his knee, his ruptured meniscus, which postponed the fight in the first place. And I can't get out of my head the picture of, there's a footballer or a soccer player, as you'd call it, Matty, and then the American might do as well, of Tyrone Mings when he had an injury to his legs, and you saw kind of the difference between one muscle in his left leg and the other in his right leg, and how much it worn down and weighed down because he couldn't train on it. And I wonder how much of the full reflection of Beterbiev of the past we will see because of the training that's been hampered because of his injury. I spoke to another kind of heavy kind of boxer that's sort of a similar sort of frame of Beterbiev, and he told me this is Scott Forrest. He's a British fighter looking to make his name and get opportunities, but he's kind of like got that big sort of frame, sort of also almost like an Anthony Yard as well too. And he told me, like, even if you got an injury like that, it doesn't mean that you'll wear away. You can find ways around this, and you can manage that injury so you can mitigate as much as possible to keep what you were before the injury. And that's sort of like, from a Beterbiev perspective, something where you might draw strength from picking him. But when you kind of hear these whispers about him finding a bit of age now and maybe slowing down. That's a big worry in this, and it's shifted my perspective on the fight going into this. And not hearing that whisper, I'd be picking Beterbiev, and I'd probably be picking Beterbiev to stop it. But right now, I'm going the other way now. I think Bivol might take this on points, and we might see a, and I hope we don't, but we might see a kind of plodding Beterbiev, much in the similar way as Canelo kind of picked off Golovkin when he jumped up to super middleweight for that third fight. But I hope we get to see a full reflection of Arthur, because it would be a shame if we get to this fight date and it's not these two at their very best.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something I'm looking for is I'm trying to see what the ring size is for this fight. If it's 20 feet or more, I definitely feel like Bivol's got it. If you get down into an 18-foot ring, and if Beterbiev's got some issues with his mobility now, he might need it. But I think this is one of the ones where the ring size might actually be reasonably interesting to know before the fight.
I can't think of this to mind, but how many fighters that have fought Arthur have actually tried to box him? Because most of the fighters have really kind of just gone toe to toe and tried to outfought him, and they've always come the losing end of this. But Bivol is completely different style. He's not going to do that unless he's drawn into it and has to fight himself out of a corner if he ends up being trapped, because Arthur's obviously a real good boxer himself too, and that gets overlooked here. But how many fighters have really actually tried to box Arthur? It's a completely different sort of style for Beterbiev to deal with.
Yeah, this is a truly interesting fight. I mean, there's a reason that we were so excited for it. There's a lot of little things that we that we're going to learn on Saturday, and I think that this very well could be the biggest fight of the year in the opinion, at least, of boxing fans themselves, regardless of what the numbers might show. So let's see here. Trying to think of who I think we hit everybody up on here. Does anybody have any final thoughts on this fight?
The only thing I would say, Matty, is regarding Beterbiev's knee. His specific type of motor skills don't require a lot of pivoting, a lot of bouncing, or a lot of jerking. So if anyone's going to have that type of injury and it not affect him, he's not like an Evander Holyfield or a Shane Mosley. He doesn't pivot or bounce. He's like me and Rob were saying, he shuffles around and he does it almost slightly square on. So he doesn't put a lot of weight on one knee or the other. I don't think the knee will be a problem with him.
Yeah, I just think it's high level shit. Like, we're into boxing, we love boxing. We are the fucking the hardcore channel or whatever, if you like, in Boxing Asylum. We cover all the niche fights from fucking Japan to the mainstream ones. But in terms, I think this one's gone slightly under the radar in terms of the wider boxing audience, even, and the boxing mainstream. I think Turkey Al Sheikh has done a good job cutting the promo on it and everything, and that's kind of what you need. Like, I look at this and I compare it to boxing as a sport, kind of comparing it to kind of the trajectory of the UFC and that, like, and they have their big stars and they market it well and that, like, in this fight, really, I feel like everybody should be talking about it, because these are the two best guys at 175. I think Bivol doesn't help the case when he's coming off he has one stoppage win in fucking 12 or something. That may be an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. Like, but I just feel like it probably should be talked about a lot more. But this is it. Like, we're finally going to get to see these two guys against each other. Two undefeated fighters, two highly decorated amateurs, two world-class resumes, if you like. Well, resumes with world-class guys on them. They've both come through it. And this is it. Like, we're going to find out. This is the best light heavyweight clash since fucking Ward Kovalev. Like,
Absolutely, it's been a long time coming, but I think that's going to be well worth the wait. Again, open floor if anybody has anything to say. Real quick, I want to thank a super chatter though. We had Mr. Connor Mateer again. Thank you for getting in there, Connor. Saying Chris Eubank speaking truth. We were all thinking think you might be calling back to some of the stuff that Eubank was saying about promoters. And yeah, he might have walked it back. But yeah, we know. Anyhow, again, open floor. If anybody has anything to say, feel free to speak your piece. I do think we'll probably be trying to get in here again later in the week, do a little late, closer to the fight preview show as well. All right. Well, fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank James for hopping in here. James, great addition. I really enjoyed having you on here with us. Dez, Justin, Rob Kelly, and also Eamon Khan from Seconds Out. It's been fun having you guys on here. What a great panel we ended up having today. Really appreciate each and every one of you, and I appreciate the folks that took the time to join us in the chat as well. We enjoy having you folks on. But yeah, we will see you hopefully again later this week for a little bit more of a preview action on this very anticipated fight between Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. But we'll also be here next Sunday to review everything that happened and preview a few things that'll be coming up beyond that. But you folks take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.
We'll never forget.
Golly, that's good at me.
Go to Adam move! We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking swank that can fight me.
I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7 year ain't it? 7 year ain't it? I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love Boxing Asylum. It's as simple as that.